Welcome back, everyone, to the Racing Writers Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Crandall, as always. Happy Monday, happy January 8th, and happy National Championship Day. The Georgia Bulldogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide set to do battle tonight, and I am stoked. As many of you who follow me on social media can already tell, the Georgia Bulldogs trying to win their first championship since 1980. My goodness, what a semifinal game that was last weekend, and if that's any indication of what's going to go down tonight, I'm not sure that I am mentally stable enough to handle it, but very, very excited. As I said, it'll be hopefully, the first national championship since 1980, which was before I was born, so I have not seen Georgia win a national championship, so very, very excited for tonight. But we're not here to talk football, or maybe we are. Send me some tweets. What do you guys want to talk about in the podcast? I'm open to anything. But this week, we've got another interview as we get ready for the 2018 season. This one is with Pat Suhy of Chevrolet. I'm going to run this one today because tomorrow the Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 is going to get on the racetrack for, I believe, the very first time. In Texas Motor Speedway, there's a test going on, and Chase Elliott is going to take that brand new, beautiful race car out for a test drive, and everybody's going to get to see how it looks on the racetrack, and I'm sure Chase will be ready to tell all of us how it feels and what it drives like. So that's why today I wanted to air this episode so that we can all learn about the new Chevrolet Camaro, the process of building a new race car, what Chevrolet and its engineers and all the race teams wanted to learn and really put into this race car to make sure that when it hits the racetrack, it's not only going to be fast, it's not only going to look good, but it's going to be competitive. So Pat Suhy, as I said, is my guest. He works in the motorsports competition group at Chevrolet. You'll hear him go through his history of being at General Motors and Chevrolet and the part that he played in building this brand new race car. Some of the things that I want to point out about this interview is this is a process of building this race car started back in January of 2016. And the things you're going to hear Pat talk about that I feel like are very important and will show the dedication that went into building this race car, and again, making sure that when it hits the racetrack, this will be a competitive race car. They have prepared as much as they can prepare for 2018. So some of the things I want you to take note of are the processes that went into making sure this car fit NASCAR's rules, how there was collaboration with the Chevrolet race team so that, hey, Chevrolet, this is the car we want you to build, this is what we want it to look like, but the race teams know how it needs to perform. So the collaboration of everybody involved here was really, really special in my opinion. They also took into account, which I found interesting, when building this car, how is the new inspection system this year going to play a role? Remember, we're moving to what's going to be, I guess, called a Hawkeye system. NASCAR really didn't name it, but that's kind of been the name around the garage, the Hawkeye system. I wrote about that on racer.com, so if anybody wants to go back and find that, it's completely different. It's almost like being in a video game. The cars roll up into inspection, and, there's so many different cameras and different things that are going to take pictures, and it's almost like going through an X-ray machine or an MRI machine. They're going to really be able to look in and pinpoint things on this race car. So Pat Suhy talks about how they took that into account. And the biggest thing to me that I found fascinating, and you'll probably hear it in the interview because I kept bringing it up, rear downforce. That's what is probably going to separate the Chevy Camaro from its competitors. Chevrolet focused on just subtly moving to rear downforce instead of focusing so much on the front nose and the front grille, which I think is fascinating, and I can't wait to see how that correlates on the racetrack. So that's why we're going to air this episode today, and then it'll lead nicely into Tuesday, I hope, when Chase Elliott gets that car on the track at Texas Motor Speedway. So I really hope you guys enjoy this interview. I felt as if I walked away and learned a ton, and I really hope that that's what you guys get from this as well. This episode was recorded back in November at Homestead Miami Speedway. You'll hear me mention that. So I've had this one in the can, been waiting to play it, and I felt like, again, here we are in January. It's time to roll it out as we get ready for 2018. We are 2 weeks away now from the NASCAR Media Tour for 2018, so get ready to hear a whole bunch of exciteds from drivers and crew chiefs and everybody else as we bring them out in Charlotte and we start looking at teams and drivers and preview the 2018 season. And then we're over a month away until cars are on the racetrack at Daytona for the Clash, which is February, 10th or 11th, I believe. Oh my goodness, I can't wait. I can't wait to get back to the racetrack. I'm starting to get a little stir crazy at home. I'm ready to be busy. I'm ready to write. I'm just ready to get back into business, and I'm sure you guys are too. I think that's all of my housekeeping notes for this week. Again, please continue with the ratings and reviews and sharing all of this on social media. And if there's anything that you all want to hear, maybe you want to talk about, maybe you have ideas or suggestions of better ways I can bring the sport to you this year, whether it's through this podcast or my work at racer.com. I hope everybody is bookmarking that page. I can't wait to start another year with them. Well, I guess I can't say start. I haven't stopped since last year. We flipped the calendar, but the work has never ended. So I'm ready to keep going as we get back to the racetrack. But again, if there's any ways that you all think I can help better deliver the sport, maybe it's through more podcasts or video or just, I don't know. What do you? I'm interested to hearing from you guys. So that, I guess, will be your homework assignment for this week. So yeah, I guess that's it. That's our housekeeping notes for this week. Go Bulldogs. Hopefully we will cure America of having to hear about Alabama for another year and how great they are. I had to throw that in there. So again, this is Pat Suhy of Chevrolet, and I hope you all enjoy it, and I'm really interested to get your feedback. So once you guys listen to this episode, here's another homework assignment. Send me messages wherever you may be hearing this podcast. Send me messages with what you thought about it and maybe some of the takeaways that stuck out to you, because I'm curious if they're the same of what I'm thinking about this new Chevrolet Camaro. So that will be your homework assignment. In addition to, tell me what to do. Tell me what I need to be doing this year. So here is Pat Suhy on the Racing Writers Podcast. Enjoy. Here with Pat Suhy at Homestead Miami Speedway. Of course, it's championship weekend, but I appreciate you taking the time because I wanted to dig in, of course, to what is coming for Chevrolet next year. And I guess Mr. Campbell kind of threw you to the wolves.
I guess so, yeah.
So before we get started, I don't want to massacre your title, so if you just want to take me through kind of what your title and what you've been doing at Chevrolet.
Okay, so I work in the Motorsports Competition Group, and that's the group that manages all the technical and program management aspects of all the racing programs at General Motors. And my group is the NASCAR Competition Group, so I manage a group of engineers and program managers that take care of all the technical activities and program management activities within NASCAR.
And if my research is correct, you've been with General Motors and Chevrolet for quite a while.
Yep, I'm 27 years this past February was my 27th anniversary. The first 13 of those I worked at Powertrain, doing various jobs within the engine development and engine design areas. Came to this job, my first race was the Brickyard 400 in August of 2003.
Way to get started.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And Chevrolet won that race.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe it was Kevin Harvick,
yes.
if I remember correctly. So Pat, before I dig into what is coming with the Camaro, if you want to reflect on, we of course have one race, we're recording this at Homestead, so one more race with the Chevy SS before that kind of goes into the sunset and this next era of Chevrolet comes. What kind of fond memories or reflections, because the SS has been very successful in NASCAR and of course on the street, so how will you all kind of send off the SS, I guess?
I think, for memories, I'm not a I don't remember every race we've won, right? But I think the fondest memory I have of the SS was really the way the program came together for the first, when we did the Gen 6 car to begin with. I think it was very interesting to see how our teams came together with us, how NASCAR worked with us, how the OEMs worked together. While we compete strongly on the track, I think the collaboration that we did to the point that we got to with this car, to get us all what we all wanted, what NASCAR wanted, and I think what the fans wanted, was a really big deal. And and then for the car to come out and us to have the success we had with it early on was really good. And as we've seen especially this season, it's been a bit of a struggle. And I think what you've seen is, as the other OEMs have done new cars, right? You learn things about the submission process, about things you do and don't want to do with the car as you submit it. And so as we've come up on the Camaro, our teams they've been chafing at the bit for a little while to do a new car. And we've really gotten to a whole new level of collaboration and cooperation, I'll say, amongst our teams, from the highest level down to the working level aero engineers, and I'm really excited about the Camaro.
So when it comes to the Camaro ZL1, again, if I read this correctly, you kind of coordinated and were a large part of that project. When did you mentioned everybody's been kind of chomping for this next version of the Chevy race car. When did that whole project kind of really start to get in motion? And of course, you had to keep it under wraps as well.
Right. I'd say it was really a couple of Januaries ago when we knew for sure that the SS was going to go out of production. We obviously had choices to make about what we were going to race, and traditionally it's been sedans. And as we, talked to our leadership about it, they're like, well, look, we've got the most authentic race car. We've got a V8 rear-wheel drive performance sedan that we're racing, and to go to something that's a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder front-wheel drive sedan just didn't really sit well. Mm-hmm. So we started talking about, well, geez, I wonder, we've got a Camaro in the Xfinity Series. Why wouldn't we think about doing a Camaro in the Cup Series? And that's when really, the most senior leadership that we deal with directly is Mark Royce. He was very enthusiastic about bringing the Camaro. Jim Campbell, obviously, the folks at design were really excited about doing it. And we said, well, okay, it doesn't really fit the rules right now. So we had to work with NASCAR pretty closely to get them on board, in order for us to be able to do this. And so I think as an industry, or us in partnership with NASCAR, made this happen. And so we started right around January of 2016, I guess.
Wow.
That would have been, doing the hardcore race car design work and bringing our teams in and talking about, okay, what do we need to do with this? What's this new car need to look like in order to make, because we don't do the car as it goes on the track, as you know, right? The teams build them,
right? And
there's tolerances that NASCAR allows, and so we need to provide them the best foundational piece that they can have to go build off of and make it even better.
And that was actually one of my questions, because during the announcement in Detroit in August, it was mentioned quite a few times that one of the important pieces of this project was Chevrolet working with the teams and the team specialists in terms of aerodynamics to make sure that you, from a Chevy standpoint, you guys were providing them with kind of what the Camaro you wanted to look like and things like that, but the teams know how to make it race ready.
Exactly.
So how important was that to make sure that there was a very good collaboration between the two sides so that when this rolls on the racetrack, it is race ready?
Very important. I mean, if we, obviously we don't race the cars, right? And we don't prep them to go to the racetrack. We don't go to the wind tunnel with race cars. We go to the wind tunnel with an R&D development car that doesn't have all the tricks and tweaks on it, because we're looking into the overbody performance. So bringing the teams into it, they have that, I call it the racer's eye or the racer's edge, that they get to run these things every week, and they understand what works, what doesn't work, and most importantly, what they wish they could do with the SS that they can't because of the basic configuration. So NASCAR provides us a gold surface, so it's kind of a blank car, if you will, and you're allowed to deviate so much from that surface in your design, and that's how you express the character of your particular car. And with the SS, the Gen 6 project came together really, really fast, right? Mm-hmm. So we didn't have a lot of time to think about, okay, if we do this, then this is what we can do with it at the racetrack, right? We were just really thrashing, trying to get the first round of Gen 6 cars together. And it was true, I'm sure, to all the OEMs. And so you've seen, if you were to look at them and watch the evolution of these cars as submitted, you'd see a trend. And we didn't really have a chance to jump on that trend until we did our new car here. So
it's almost like you had time to really plan and make sure, again, that you were doing this correctly, but it was also going to be I keep using the term race ready.
Yeah.
Like you had the time to make sure this was going to be a product that you could put on the racetrack and hopefully be competitive.
Right. Being last to do a new car in the Gen 6 world, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you get to do a lot of development. You don't have to go relearn stuff. The first year you've got a new car on the track. But at the same time, the limitations of your foundational shape become more and more obvious as you go down the calendar or out in time. So I think having, again, watched what our competitors have done, understanding NASCAR's inspection procedures, knowing that Hawkeye's coming, that's a big deal too, because that changes
the new inspection process.
It changes. It really, it throws a curve at guys that built their cars to fit templates, right? So now I think our knowledge of the Hawkeye system coming while we were developing our car, I think that's going to give us some kind of an advantage. It might not be long-lived, but I think
you've prepared for what you can prepare for.
Exactly, yeah. So like I said, I'm really excited about it, and having the teams engaged with us literally from, after we got the first design out the door, said, okay, we're getting this group together, and we're all going to lock arms and we're going to march down this path toward getting the car submitted.
Was there times where during this collaboration where maybe the teams were like, well, you guys have a good idea, but in terms of racing, like that's not going to work, we need to do it this way?
Oh yeah, we had plenty of guys trying to design a race car for us, and it's good though. It's very healthy because it makes us take a second look and say, well, why can't we do that, or how can we do that in a different way that still looks good and doesn't look like we're trying to cheat something up for the submission process. I mean, it was really good. I think and that's why having a bunch of different perspectives is cool, especially if you and my team. We want nothing but to win races and championships and dominate on the racetrack, right? So I felt a little bit like the mean dad, right? Because they'd say, well, we really want to do this, and I'm like, well, that's not going to fly with design.
Yeah.
So, I kind of had to call time out a few times, but then you go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what is this really trying to accomplish, and can we do it a different way? And I think that's the result we got is very, I would say, satisfying technically, aerodynamically, and aesthetically too.
So when you have the unveil in Detroit, I'm sure it was a sigh of relief, but how much of a prideful moment was it too to see
awesome.
That car roll up and have a 7-time champion and Jimmy Johnson drive it?
It's very cool, and having the production ZL1 and that car next to one another, I don't know. I think it's one of the best looking designs as far as keeping true to the production design out there. We were fortunate to have people from GM Design that helped us. Our race car designer came up from Charlotte, and he got to see it. Our lead aero program manager got to see it, the program manager. And with it being the Michigan weekend, the whole rest of my team, that wasn't really involved in the project, got to come and be a part of it too. So it was really cool. Plus all the leadership from GM that was there. Mark Royce is a huge supporter of ours. I think he's a fan. And to have him there talking about how cool it is to see the Camaro get on the racetrack was very nice.
And speaking of cool, I was at the event and I made it a point to talk to every Chevy driver who is going to be driving this car next year, and 2 things came up. The first one was, and this is their term, not mine, although I agree with it, the term that kept coming up was, it looks badass.
Yeah.
And they were so excited, and they are excited to drive it. What has been the feedback from the drivers since this has been announced?
Well, I mean, I think you certainly have an emotional reaction, right, to having a really good-looking race car, and I guess finally one that kind of, it's a coupe like the car really is anyway. So I think there's certainly an amount of pride or an amount of satisfaction that goes with getting in something that looks good and looks like a kind of a proper race car, I'll call it. And on top of that, they had obviously they're curious about what's going on. So inside their own organizations, they knew, I think, about the gains that we've made on the fundamental design, and they know that their engineers are excited to get this thing in the wind tunnel to start developing and to go to the racetrack, and then to get it on the racetrack and race against the competition we have today, which kind of a tough season for us, but
right.
I'm very hopeful that we come out of the box pretty strong. We've got some stuff going on, working in that direction that I'm excited about, and hopefully we'll talk about maybe a little later on. But I think the drivers are happy about the way the car looks, certainly, but I think they're probably more excited about the potential for performance that they would have been kind of read in on by their teams.
Well, and that was the next part, and this is where I'm hoping you can educate me a little bit. So the second part of the feedback that I keep hearing from Chevy drivers is this car will get us will kind of up our game. We'll up the manufacturer, we'll up all of our race teams. It's going to make us competitive. How? I mean, what is it that they are seeing or they are hearing, and what is it from your perspective in building this car? How will the Camaro kind of, push, I guess, Chevy to that next level to compete with, Toyota has their new car, and the Fords of certainly with the Stewart Haas have been running well. So what is it about the Camaro that the drivers are very excited and think is going to help them?
I think first of all, it's just fundamentally the way NASCAR manages parity, I'll say, is they provide us a box of performance. They say you can't have, in submission form, you can't have any more than X downforce, any less than this much drag, and any more than this much side force. So those are kind of the three aero components that we measure when we submit the car. And what's not measured is aero balance, so the percentage of downforce that's on the front versus on the rear.
Okay.
And that's an important variable, I guess, that affects how the car's handled fundamentally. And as the teams develop in the wind tunnel, they can make more front downforce. It's very hard to make more rear downforce. So our focus on this car was to shift as much of the downforce to the rear as we could. And you've probably heard, I think some of our competitors have been publicly called out, I'll say, for not having as much rear downforce as maybe they did in a previous iteration or as they should or could have.
Okay.
And going into it, we knew that was fundamentally we had to really work to get rear downforce on the car. So again, within the bounds of making the car look right and meeting NASCAR's requirements for submission, we worked really hard at that. So there should be a fundamental rearward shift in downforce, which will lead to more total downforce in the racetrack, which will lead to faster lap times.
Okay.
And then, on top of that, the things we talked about earlier with just the fundamental shape of the car and how then the teams can take advantage of the tolerances beyond what the basic car is are going to let them do more than they can do with the SS today. So, again, the combination of more rear downforce to begin with and a little more tunability and more ability to generate even more total downforce is going to be the key.
And it's interesting that you mentioned downforce, because that's the first thing I think in competition now everybody talks about is downforce.
Yeah.
That's become like the golden word, I feel like, in the sport recently. And it's interesting because you just talked about rear downforce, and what struck me when you said that was that's an interesting approach, because when you look at the nose of the Camaro, it looks like it just wants to eat the air instead of doing anything with downforce. Right. So I guess, again, as you explain that, this is why I'm asking, is because I think everybody wants to understand, when you look at the car, it looks like it wants to do one thing, so how are you guys kind of going about making sure it does what it needs to? So I guess that's the answer. It's going to be heavy on rear downforce. It's
going to have more, and when we're talking subtle shifts here, we're not talking like 10% more rear. I mean, we're talking shifting, fractions of percents here and there.
But it seems like that's a different approach than, I think, as you had mentioned, kind of what maybe has been
some of our competitors.
Yeah.
I'll say.
So how do you, when, again, talking about the features of this car, of course it looks like the street car in terms of the nose and fenders and things like that. Mm-hmm. Was it a hard balance to, again, account for making sure you and the teams work to make a race car that's going to be competitive, but keep it true to what the street car looks like?
Oh yeah, like I said earlier, there's probably somebody or somebodies at every team that were helping us design a better race car, but undoing design features that, at the end of the day, we said, okay, well, let's go test how sensitive we are. Like if you think about how deep the valley in the hood is around the power dome, right? Some guys said, well, there's no way, you can't have that, you got to wipe that out. So, okay, we went to the wind tunnel and smoothed it out, and guess what? It wasn't any better, or maybe even was a little worse. I'm not the aero guy, but there was a lot of instances where
testing was done. It's not like you guys just built the car.
Yeah, we didn't just say, oh no way, we're not doing that. We said, okay, let's go test it and see how sensitive it is, and if it is, then let's go figure out a way to compromise and find, the least disruptive way to achieve the aero result, but still maintain the character. So there was, if you look at probably every line on the car that you'd say, man, that doesn't look aerodynamic, or what I mean?
I think that's what my mind was saying.
Yeah, so if you look at every feature on the car that's like that, we looked at every one of them. Mm-hmm. And probably in more than one way. We do it in CFD, computational fluid dynamics, so you kind of do it on the tube.
Okay.
Then you do it on a scale model car, so a 40%, 8-foot long car in a scale model wind tunnel.
Okay.
And then you go try it on the full-size car. And, so you have to, if you're on the team, if you put your team hat on, you do not want to go to the racetrack with something that you feel is inferior. It's feeling like you can't win the race. You're just going to drive around. And I think we achieved, again, a really good balance between them being enthusiastic about the potential performance of the car, and us being ecstatic about the way the car looks.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, Chevrolet fans and just like the drivers have every reason to be ecstatic, because not only have you built the car, but you have, again, prepared as much as you can prepare in terms of testing. This is not just going to roll out with no data behind it for what you expect it to do. We did more
CFD runs, which, if you talk about F1, right, they live in CFD because they're not allowed to do much tunnel testing, if any, anymore.
Right.
We did more CFD runs for this car, I think, than we've done on the sum of all race vehicles we've developed for Cup, Xfinity, and Truck up until now.
Wow.
So it's it was a pretty staggering amount of work that got done. And again, we shared all the CFD results with the Aero guys, and they got to look at all the plots and all the sensitivity studies, and we marched forward down a path together, and certainly didn't. It's like a marriage, right? You don't agree on everything all the time, but you decide you're going to stick it out, and we got to a good place.
Two more things for you, Pat. You had mentioned a little while ago that this year has been, I guess, by Chevrolet standards, a little bit of a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of where and why do you think you fell behind?
I think part of it, our car design's old, and when you don't have a change, people run out of ideas, but they run out of, the gains are incrementally smaller and smaller the further down the road you get. And so I think without fundamental change to the body like we're going to have, their gains were just less and less.
Mm-hmm.
And both Ford and Toyota's done 2 new cars and Ford has done 1, got to take advantage of the things they learned that they wish they could have done on the first car. And that's just where we are. So I think aerodynamically we're probably not the best on the racetrack. We might not be the worst all the time, but we're not the best.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the rest of it I think is there's team dynamics. I mean, it's been awesome to see Kyle Larson step up and kind of have his breakout season this year. Losing a team coming into this year wasn't good for us,
mm-hmm.
obviously. And I just think, the dynamics of the sport are there. It is a momentum thing, right? And so we kind of got in the beginning of the season and had a couple of good weeks there, and then just took a nosedive, and it's been very sporadic ever since. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to the end of the season in the Cup deal.
Yeah.
Today too, because we're going to win manufacturers and drivers today in the Xfinity Series. I'm going to be at the beach, because we don't have to do anything.
It's exciting though. It has to be. I mean, that's really cool to have all 4 drivers. Just on a side note, knowing that you have 100%
awesome.
Chance of winning. So let's end with this, Pat. This episode will air during the off season as we get ready for 2018. And I know you've mentioned it a few times. You've already used the word excited, and we just talked about how you're looking forward, of course, to next year. So do you want to just talk or express any more about how excited you are I'll give you the first chance to be the first one during the off season, since that's always the watchword, excited, to just talk about rolling out with this new car next year.
There's a lot of people working really hard right now to make parts, to get parts in the in our warehouse and shipped out to the teams, and make sure that the parts are what the teams need and what we need, and that work is going to continue through the holidays. It's not going to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole lot of people that are going to work behind the scenes, in the quote-unquote off-season. So I think once we get the pipeline filled with parts and the teams start getting their pipelines filled with race cars, we can start doing a little celebrating and really, again, looking forward to getting to Daytona. I think especially getting to, Vegas and Fontana,
mm-hmm.
where we're going to hopefully see
all that downforce.
Right, come into play. So I'm, I guess, cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the new car on the track, and I'm cautiously optimistic about the performance, like right out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you look at the history of new car introductions, you're on a steep part of the learning curve. So I'm hoping that we get through the steep part of the learning curve in the off season here, and we see that at those tracks. But whatever happens early in the season, I really do believe we've got the best foundational car out there, and that longer term, it's going to be very, very competitive.
So I guess just as a follow-up, you kind of, in terms of being cautiously optimistic, you expect a little bit of learning pains, but hopefully not ones that last too long.
Right. I think there's going to be teams or crew chiefs that figure something out, right? That's going to, maybe one or two cars float to the top, which you see anyway. Maybe we'll be surprised by who it is, maybe not. But I think overall, my expectation is that we're going to see Chevrolet's performance as a group improve.
And that's the goal.
And that's the goal, is we want to make them all better. We want them all to be racing for first place and then go race each other, right? I mean, at that point, it's kind of like today. It doesn't matter who wins because it'll be a Chevy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Pat, I greatly appreciate you educating me, and hopefully everybody that is going to listen to this, because I know, again, it's a great-looking race car, but everybody wants to know how is it going to help my driver on the racetrack. So I appreciate you educating me.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.